I want to discuss a variety of things today about the state of the election. I will say that my previous video about the Hunter Biden laptop is more and more being confirmed as time goes by. Its authenticity is pretty clear cut, and the mainstream media is showing their censorship and the fact that they're not a reliable news source. These people are no longer journalists, they are true political activists, which fits into some of my other themes about the danger of a Democrat victory and the confluence between a political party and the bulk of media, including the tech giants. But let's get on to a little bit about the state otherwise. On the polling, on the bad news side, and I wouldn't get too worried about just this number, the real clear average is now 7.7% in favor of Biden. Of course, that's a lot better than it was not too long ago when it was around 10. So Trump's position clearly has improved relatively. In fact, that's the way I even look at the polls. I don't trust that much. I go back and look at what was their number in the last report and what is the trend. Is it going in a direction or not? So if even a poll that's biased, if it was 10 points in favor of Biden and now it's 6 points in favor of Biden, you begin to see a trend that's moving in Trump's favor. See. Then we have the polls that are more favorable and I think probably more credible. I still tend to like Rasmussen the best. They do occasionally have a glitch, but I think right now the latest one is Biden up only by 3%. And remember, we won with Hillary Clinton up 2.1% in the final vote count in 2016. So that means that we're getting closer and closer to a possibility of winning. And we look at some of the Trafalgar State polls, and they're looking fairly encouraging, although it's still very challenging. The other thing that's going on that I would point out, that Trump by campaigning in places such as I think he did a Minnesota and did a Nevada. Now I don't know whether that was a diversion, a feint. I mean, but between the two of them, that's 16 electoral votes, which is equal to Michigan. So if we were to win those two and lose Michigan, it'd be a trade-off. Or if we were to win Minnesota and lose Wisconsin, it would be a trade-off, etc. If we, so there is, and we don't need the full 306 electoral votes to win. My guess is around 275. If we can get in that range, even with a couple of unfaithful electors, we still should be comfortably above 270. So, that's kind of where we're at the moment. And then there's the other aspect, this anecdotal idea, which is out there, the stealth Trump voter, that there's these people who won't tell the pollsters the truth, that they're either because they're afraid or they're just ticked off at pollsters. And it seems to be a mixture of both. With all the cancel culture going on, and it's a problem, obviously, I personally don't have. I mean, they can't fire me now. So, but if I was working for a job where the HR department may have a bunch of liberals in it or something, maybe I would be worried about what I said and wouldn't be making videos like this, for instance. So there is that aspect to the story. And so we don't know how significant it is. But for instance, if you're within, let's say, 3%, and there's 3% of the people are not reporting the truth to the pollsters, that's a whole different story, isn't it? Then there's motivation. There's a theory that the Trump people have a greater enthusiasm. On the other hand, all the Biden people have to do for the most part is fill out an application for an absentee ballot, and then correctly fill it out and submit it, and they're in, right? I mean, don't worry about the mail; it will deliver it. I mean, come on, I find that I don't know what's going on with these mail cases we've heard, but overall, I think the mail will be delivered. I personally, though, I'm going to vote in person because that's just my approach, and I think it's more sure. And I haven't asked for an absentee ballot either, so so that's it. But okay, so that's the way of the land. And then you have the Trump rallies, which are spontaneous, and I mean, they're not union shop stewards saying everybody get out for the rally because our candidate's going to be speaking and we got to show support. It's not organized like the Mondale rallies were in the last week or so of the 1984 election. The spontaneity of it indicates true enthusiasm, and that may be a factor. On the other hand, there's a lot of talk about high voter turnout, and usually, historically, that was an advantage to the Democrats. However, when you look at all the polling we have, and this is across the board, demographically, it looks like that Trump is favored by lower income voters and less favored by higher income voters. the break point seems to be somewhere around the maybe 70,000 a year or thereabouts. That above that level, the vote tends toward Democrat, and below that level, it tends toward Republican, which is very unusual. Added to the strange numbers you're getting in some polls involving the African American and Latino vote. Very strange numbers there, and high for Trump. So it's possible that we've had a kind of a realignment in politics here over Trump, and therefore a high turnout might actually be favorable to Trump. If people that normally don't vote turn out en masse to vote for Trump, that would throw all the conventional thinking out the window. So the bottom line is vote, and don't worry about the polls that much, because ultimately, although as a mathematician by training, I can't resist looking at the numbers. I mean, it's just what I do. But looking around it, I think that this time, I just say I don't know what's going to happen. I think it could be anything from a Democrat landslide to, who knows, maybe a surprise Trump victory or landslide. I doubt the Republicans are going to have a landslide just based on polling data and how, usually when they're inaccurate due to the kind of things I've discussed here, they're only off by a few percent. So I still think it will be a close race for Trump if he wins. And that's why it's even more important that all Trump supporters get out and vote. And make sure you probably vote in person at either the early voting or the election day voting, which I suspect this year may be the easiest thing to do, really. I know one time in 2008 in the election when I lived in a different state, and the early voting was just incredibly insane lines. And I went to my polling, I gave up on it and said, I'm going to go on election day. And if I have to use vacation time, I'll do it. It was like 5 minutes from walking in there to walking out having voted. It was very fast. There was only one other person there and plenty of places to vote. So therefore, like I said, it's anyway, that's kind of that. I'm going to look at another case of polling, though, and show you the kind of contradictions I see. And this is the same organization, Rasmussen. Rasmussen recently released a poll in Ohio showing Biden at 50 and Trump at 45. Okay, 5% advantage for Biden. Okay. Then they have a national poll coming out just the day after or so, and it shows Biden up only by 3% nationally. Now, when you go back to the 2016 election, Trump beat Hillary Clinton by literally 8 points in that race, while losing by 2 points nationally in the popular vote. So that's a 10-point delta. So if that's the dynamics of the state, we have to say that if the Trump, if the Rasmussen national poll is more or less right, Trump should be up by several percent, maybe 8, probably less, because there'll probably be less people throwing away their vote for a third party or a fringe party, and maybe most of those people will maybe vote for Biden. Those might be the anti-Trump former Republicans, okay? So it cuts him down to, say, 5. But it looks like to me he should have a comfortable lead in Ohio, it would seem like, right? Unless something strange happened between Trump and Ohio that I'm completely unaware of. Like somehow he fell out of favor in that one state in a very unique way. So I think that shows you just the example of what I'm looking at as to how these polling numbers can really be strange, and you have to be careful with them. A lot of the Trafalgar numbers out show really tight races with either Trump ahead by a little bit or Biden ahead by a little bit. And those are in the range where extra enthusiasm and turnout can make all the difference, which could leave Trump to win things such as Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota. So, again, I want to be enthusiastic here that that's the case. And again, it's all important, of course, to support the Republicans for the Senate and for the House. That's our fallback. Now, today, I understand it's been released from the 60 Minutes that Biden is now talking on the Supreme Court of having a commission appointed, having 180 days to make recommendations of what to do about the court system. So I don't know how to look at that. You can look at it one way that he's basically punting, and commissions report things, and then Congress doesn't end up doing them, and it leaves a 6-month cooling off period after the election, so that maybe radical maneuvers that are popular right after the victory won't be so popular 6 months in when their polling numbers start dropping, because people are probably not too happy about what they voted for when they really get it in office. I mean, and so if the disaster happens and he wins, of course. If he loses, yeah, that's a whole different story. But my point is, I still say the safe thing to do is vote Republican for all federal offices, and that way it won't happen. Keep our Constitution safe, and like I said, if you don't really like Trump, remember he has so much opposition in the media and the bureaucracies, etc., that he's not going to get too far out of control. Whereas the Democrats having a complete control of the national government could do some really radical things that might be hard to reverse, if even possible. Okay, so that kind of sets the tone of the things I have to say today, I guess, and we'll just have to keep with it and see what happens. This is the day of the debate tonight, and let's hope that Trump kind of reins it in a bit. My thinking is, although Trump has complained about the idea that the two candidates will not be allowed to interrupt each other in their 2-minute response to the original question, actually, I think that's an advantage to Trump, because I don't think he could restrain himself if he could do it. But now he will be restrained, and so that will force him to discipline on listening to the other guy's full message and then formulating during that time the best response he can come up with, which is probably better than lashing out at each lie he hears and deciding he has to counter that lie instantaneously. You don't. We know that the Bidens are liars, and it's sufficient to say at the end of the thing, that was all a bunch of lies. I mean, what I'm saying is, I don't think you have to point-by-point counter just every lie, maybe certain special ones. So I hope he'll restrain himself there, and maybe we can have a more civil but still spirited debate during the free exchange period afterwards, which he can try to interject the things he really is concerned about, and that would be helpful. So, I guess that kind of wraps up the thing. We'll wait for the debate tonight and see what happens. Going into it, I think things are trending in the right direction. Let's just hope they get there in time. All for now. If you like these videos, remember to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, and you can also forward links to anybody you think would want to see them. I'd like to build this channel up and get more people on it, get some more subscriptions.